We'll move on now to Sorrel, who's the Director of Technical Ecology. So good morning, Sorrel, and over to you.
Good morning, thanks, Sean. Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me okay. As Sean just said, I run a small consultancy called Technical Ecology, although people might know me from working at Gwent Wildlife Trust in a former life. And for the last sort of just over a year now, I've been working with the Resilient Greater Gwent partnership to try and make a regional state of nature for Greater Gwent. And so I wanted to kind of share the work that's been going on and really encourage you guys to look at data at a regional level. And it's really exciting, honestly. Get my things going. Right, so just briefly about Resilient Greater Gwent. So that's a massive project funded by NROR. It's got loads of sub-projects. And the State of Nature was just one of those sub-projects. The partnership consists of 5 local authorities, so Blaenau Gwent, Torfaen, Monmouthshire, Caerphilly and Newport, I think it's them all, as well as NGOs like Bug Life and Gwent Wildlife Trust and NRW. So big partnership, big projects, loads going on, and Greater Gwent State of Nature was just a part of that. We wanted to sort of look and find out what data was available for the region, find out where the gaps were, find out what's happening to our species and habitats, with the idea that we could take that information going forward and use them to inform the local nature recovery action plans, local projects, feature recording, awareness raising, all sorts of things like that. Just to kind of step back and ask why work at a regional level. It makes a lot of sense on a lot of fronts. So from an ecological point of view, looking at a whole catchment, looking at a series of interconnected sites and landscape, trying to be bigger, better and more joined up, as we all are. But also from a people perspective, people think in regions. You know, we come from the valleys, or we belong to a back group that covers Gwent, or you know, it might be a national park. These kinds of things are all regional scales. Policy often works in regions as well. The National Development Framework is divided into regions, management plans for the national park, things like that, and obviously area statements are a regional approach as well. And finally, the fact that if you're working in regions, you're probably collaborating with other people, and it can lead to really positive partnership. I'm defining a region as an area that's big enough to see a pattern, but small enough that you can identify an individual site. So it's the ideal size for targeting action, basically. So it's big enough that you can make sense of what's going on, but small enough that you can kind of go, aha, that's where I need to do something. I don't think it has to be an area statement area. It could be a small catchment. It could be a really, really big site. So I'm sort of thinking regions is kind of quite a flexible term. When we're looking at data, and what biological data is out there especially, I want to introduce this idea of my data continuum, where on one end you have accuracy. So I'm going to start waving my pointer around now. Accuracy. And on the other end you have inclusion. And where you sit on this arrow depends entirely on what you're trying to find out and who your audience is. So if I'm attempting to write for a scientific journal, I'm going to be way up here, and I'm not going to be using old records. I'm not going to be using unverified records or whatever. But maybe if I'm a community group, I might be further down this end because I still want to see historic records, even if there's some uncertainty around them. So just to kind of have that in your head as to where you're going to be on that slider. So I'm going to give you a quick tour of the kinds of data that we've been using in Greater Gwent. It's very much a snapshot because I haven't got much time. It's like a big whistle-stop tour. So I'm sorry that I don't have more time to talk to you about it, but I could talk about it all day, so it's probably a good thing. This is the habitat data that we have available. The pointer has vanished, Adam. Adam can find it for me. There it is. Thank you. So most of you will probably be familiar with these. This is a picture of my village. So this is all the same place. In the phase one, the old phase one, the 1997 phase one, the phase one update in 2010, and the land cover map from Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. As you can see, they're all very different. I like the way that the calcareous grassland here has turned to acidic grassland here, because the scale of the broad habitats is so much more coarse scale. It's a much broader scale. You need to be working in big regions for this to make sense. Obviously, if you're just looking at my village, that's probably not much use for you. But if you're sort of working at a massive regional scale, then this might be too fine for you. They all have pros and cons. They're all sourced in a slightly different way. So phase one originally was done by surveyors. It was done in the field. Both the update and the land cover map were done by satellite, but with different algorithms applied to them to get the results. And land cover map uses a slightly different habitat classification as well. So you can't really compare them, which is annoying, but that's life. So our sort of whole habitat cover is not so great, I will say that. But there are loads, and I mean loads, of other habitat information out there that you can use and that are absolutely fantastic. So things like the Water Framework Directive information that you can get off FLAY or off NRW. We have a National Forest Inventory, a Traditional Orchard Inventory, and for those you can work out some measures of ecosystem resilience. So you can work out extent. You can look at the wonderful connectivity mapping that was done by NRW in 2010 and sort of look at your connectivity. You can get condition measures for some habitats. So Water Framework Directive, there's loads of information on condition out there, loads of different measures of condition, but it's probably one of the best. Whereas for other habitats, so grassland, for example, for Greater Gwent anyway, we know almost nothing. As I said before, you cannot compare changes in habitats over time by looking at these different habitat data sets. Just because of the difference in methodologies, they don't compare, which is a shame, but not good practice to compare them. What I do want to emphasise that I haven't kind of said before is this is easy data. This is not R space. This is not generalised linear models or anything like that. This is stuff that you can get on your own systems. It's stuff that your LERC can do for you. These are things that are accessible and should be for everybody. And most of the data sets come from Play and they're free to access. So it's a great resource that everyone should be making the most of. Moving on to our species data, we have an absolute wealth. I can't remember the number that Adam said earlier in the week. It was in the millions, 14 million. You might correct me if he's on. Records in our LERCs, and it's absolutely fantastic. And although most people will be thinking, right, species records, thank you, Adam, 14.2 million. Most people will be thinking range, area of occurrence, the kinds of data that is used to make our red lists. But actually there's loads more that you can do with species records. So changes over time, species richness. You can look at record types, so road casualties, breeding records, summer and winter records. Within each individual species record, there is an absolute wealth of information. And I have to say, because I've been looking at records from Herefordshire and Gloucestershire, because I've been looking at the border as well, our lurks give us far more information than the English ones do, so be very, very grateful. And you can also correlate with your habitat data, with protected sites. You can see what's going on with where these species are. So it's a really, really fantastic resource. Here's my example. I do apologise if you're watching this on a mobile phone, because you might not be able to see this very well, but I'm very sorry. This map here is a map of Odonata species richness, so damsels and dragons. And the dark spots are where we've got high species richness, and the blanks are where we have no records at all. So just from this map, we can tell quite a lot. We can say, okay, we're probably not recording enough in central Monmouthshire, and that's a problem that's happening across loads of different species. We don't know whether it's because there's no wildlife there or just because nobody goes there. We don't know. There's not a lot of public access in the middle of Monmouthshire. But we kind of expected that the Gwent levels would be great for Odonata, so we know that it's a stronghold for hairy dragonfly and things like that. But what's also interesting is that the valleys, the sort of southeast valleys, are also fantastic. Even though there are empty patches, they're probably not as well recorded as the Gwent levels. We still have these wonderful pockets of really high species richness, which is fabulous. What I then did is I took this map and made this map. And this map is a map of those squares that qualify as a site of importance for nature conservation, a BDS priority site, or a BDS local priority site, or those ones that are close to. So particular note is this one here, which is where we have probably a site of national importance for scarce blue-tailed damsel. It just needs a little bit more recording to check that the breeding population is as big as we think it is. So this is a way that you can take something that's regional scale, big enough to see a pattern, and then you can take it enough so that you can target individual action and say, right, we need to keep an eye on this site, we need to check out these other sites, make sure that if they are worthy of designation, they could be designated, all sorts of wonderful, wonderful things that you can do. So it's really great. Note of cautions. Sorry, I do these, but it's important. Obviously, species records have recorder bias on them. Certain places get recorded more than anywhere else. In Greater Gwent, it's Newport Wetlands. It's like a sort of super hotspot. And also, it totally depends on your species. So some species are really well recorded, other species are hardly ever recorded. And as long as you have that in your head, then carry on and make the most of them. The other thing that you might want to do with species records is see how many records you've got over time. This is hedgehog roadkills in Greater Gwent over time. But actually, it tells me nothing. I don't know why this line's going up. It could be that there are more hedgehogs. It could be that there are more cars, or it could be that there are more recording. There's more recording going on. So don't do it. It's not really viable statistically at all. So that's my kind of warning for that one. What you can do is use it to analyse recording itself. So here we have a lovely spike of brown hare records, which corresponds to the time when Gwent Wildlife Trust did a brown hare recording scheme. It doesn't tell us a huge amount about the brown hare population in Greater Gwent, but it does tell you about the impact of a recording scheme, and also that brown hares are probably under-recorded for the rest of the time. So you can see massive impact, I think we've got about 5 times as many records as the average. But it doesn't actually last very long, which is something also to bear in mind if you're doing recording campaigns. Pretty cool. I'm just checking where I am. If you do want to try and find population trends for your region, then you need to look at a recording scheme. This map here is a map of adders, lizards, slowworms and grass snakes. It's a 50-year map, so it's a bit more populated than the one that Mark showed us earlier in the week. And this is what you can do with species records. You can kind of go, oh, where would I do a recording scheme? Where would I put my NARS square if I had one? And you might think you might want to record the grass snakes down at Newport Wetlands. You might want to do the adders on Beacon Hill. Sorry, that's Beacon Hill. That's the orange. Those kinds of things. And then you can check where they actually are. That's where our NARS schemes were. I particularly like the optimism of this person who decided to do their square where there's been no reptile records ever. And you sort of think, well, I'll move that one over, I'd move that one down. So you can improve the targeting of your recording schemes. 5 NARS squares is not enough to determine what's happening to reptiles in Greater Gwent. Really, you need 40. That's kind of the rule of thumb for sort of statistical significance. For Greater Gwent, we only had that for our birds. Our bird recording is absolutely fantastic, mainly thanks to Gwent Ornithological Society. We had 74 BBS squares over Gwent, which again is fantastic coverage. I will say that this is the one graph where we cheated, and BTO did a linear model for us, because that was actually cheaper than getting the data ourselves and doing it ourselves. It was cheaper to pay them to do the whole lot for us, and the results were much better. So they did a line for us showing what was happening to farmland birds in Greater Gwent, and they did the Welsh trend with the same species for us, so that we've got a proper comparison and we can see that Gwent is broadly following the same pattern as Wales, with sort of slow and steady decline of farmland birds. So really lovely data. So yeah, birds, we had enough to do that. We were kind of on the edge for bats, so for lesser horseshoes, we probably have enough. The exception to the rule, and just because it's such a nice graph, is this one. We only have 2 roosts for Greater Horseshoe in Greater Gwent, and so we have records for both of them. So this is what's happening to them, and I get quite emotional every time I see that orange line, because the Caerphilly roost is the site is managed by a volunteer group. So they've had a 4-fold increase in 20 years, which is pretty darn good, really. And both roosts are happily above their favourable conservation status. So really good news for Greater Horseshoes in Greater Gwent, which is lovely. So coming to an end, yeah, do it is the simple message. There's absolutely loads of data out there. What I have done is provided a list of data sources that I've been using, which will be available from WBP, and Adam might be able to do something fancy and link it in here somehow as well. Or you can just ping me an email and I will let you know. Yeah, it's, like I said, loads out there. Not all of them are perfect. We're definitely lacking in kind of complete cover habitat information, and we're lacking in information about condition. And these are both things that were highlighted in the SONAR evidence gaps list. but it is absolutely worth doing. You can target where you're going to record next. You can identify sites where it'd be, the most effective interventions. Absolutely loads that can be done. So don't be scared of it. Go out and grab it with both hands. A lot of it's free, and those that aren't free, it is actually quite affordable. I don't believe that all data should be free, because it's people who are collating and validating your data, and you do get what you pay for. And this is something that is going to help you if you're interested in evidence-based decision making. Yeah, I hope you find it really useful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sorrel. Really, really interesting. I like the data continuum idea, but I think that last slide was really, really useful, because it gives you that future direction, your plans and target recording. And it's really interesting. You showed the biases as well, and we had a comment from Peter Loy Hancock, who said it was an excellent to kind of point that out. What his excellent points regarding uncertainties with data in hedgehog roadkill records. And I assume you're working with College University, or have had some contact with their projects. Perhaps they'd be able to smooth the data out using fancy statistics.
No, that data doesn't incorporate Project Splatter data.
That is Project Splat data.
Yeah.
Oh, fab. That's useful to clarify. And Alison Jones made a comment about the greater horseshoe bat roost in Caerphilly. We know where they are, but sometimes we've just got to be careful that everyone else does. Potential developers or potential kind of works that are going on. So I'm sure we can take that. Further.